Welcome to Do the Math America. I am Charlene Math Shaman. This is lesson 56, perimeter and area of rectangles using the English Standard System. In my previous video, lesson 55, I covered perimeter and area of polygons using the metric system. But here in America, most of us use the English Standard System. So I wanted to show you some examples using the English Standard System to figure out area and perimeter of rectangles and show you how to convert units from inches to feet and from square inches to square feet. Find the area and perimeter of this rectangle. So we will start with finding the perimeter. And the formula for perimeter equals the sum of the sides. The length of this rectangle is 6 foot 1 3/4 inches, and the width is 5 foot 3.5 inches. So we start by converting these units into inches. 1 foot equals 12 inches, so then 6 feet would be 6 times 12. And I write that equation as 6 feet times 12 inches per foot. And I do that calculation on the side. 12 times 6 equals 72. The foot in the denominator cancels with the foot in the numerator, leaving inches by itself. So 6 feet equals 72 inches. Next, I add 72 plus 1 3/4 inches. And I convert 1 3/4 to 1.75 inches. So 72 plus 1.75 equals 73.75. And I box that calculation so that I can be ready to use that figure when I calculate the perimeter. Next, we convert 5 foot 3.5 inches into inches. 5 feet equals 5 times 12 inches per feet. And I do that calculation on the side. 5 times 12 equals 60. And once again, the foot in the numerator cancels with the foot in the denominator, leaving inches. So 5 feet equals 60 inches. Now I add 60 inches plus 3.5 inches, or 3.5 inches, equals 63.5 inches. And I box that figure because that is the width of the rectangle. So the length of the rectangle is 73.75 inches and the width is 63.5 inches. Both lengths are 73.75 inches and both widths are 63.5 inches. I label the rectangle with those figures. Now I'm ready to find the perimeter. So I write the equation. Perimeter equals 73.75 plus 73.75 plus 63.5 plus 63.5. And since my screen is getting too crowded with numbers, I need to erase all those other calculations. In real life, you would be finding another piece of scratch paper to continue the calculations, and you would keep those previous calculations on hand in case you made a mistake. You can double check your figures. So I like to add these figures by hand. It keeps my math facts fresh and ability to recall these facts quickly and accurately. If you rely on a calculator for these calculations too often, you will lose your ability to recall your math facts. It's similar to how a concert pianist starts their practice sessions with playing scales that they learned as a small child. Practicing scales, like doing sums in by hand instead of a calculator, primes your mind into performing a piano piece or solving a math problem. However, it's always a good idea to use a calculator to double check your calculations. Now I have added all the sides and I get 274.5 inches. It's hard for us to get a sense of what is that length, 274.5 inches, so we will convert to feet. 274.5 inches divided by 12 inches per feet. And I do that calculation on the side. A construction worker told me that he has gotten very good at division by 12 because he does it so frequently in his work. So when I do division, I like to write out the multiples of the divisor before doing the division itself. So I write out the multiples of 12 on the side, then I do the division, 274.5 divided by 12. You can watch my earlier video, lesson 18, dividing decimals, for a refresher on the skill. As you can see, my calculations are getting a little crowded, which can cause me to make unforced errors. So it's much better to spread out your work. Don't be afraid to use multiple sheets of paper when doing a calculation like this. The trees will forgive you if you get the right answers. So 274.5 inches equals 22.87 feet. It's probably unnecessary to work this calculation out more decimals places than this. To figure out how many inches is 0.87 feet, you would multiply 12 inches per foot times 0.87 feet. And that works out to be 10.44 inches. So the perimeter of this rectangle is 22 feet and about 10.5 inches. And I box my answer. So sometimes when we do conversion of units, we multiply by 12 inches per foot. And sometimes we divide by 12 inches per foot. So if you are getting confused about when to multiply and when to divide, you can use the units themselves to help you make that determination. To convert from inches to feet, for example, here we have 274.5 inches divided by 12 inches per foot. This equals 274.5 inches times 1 foot per 12 inches. So you can think of it as multiplying fractions. The inches in the numerator cancels with the inches in the denominator. That leaves us 274.5 feet divided by 12. And we worked that out earlier to be 22.87 feet. Using units can also help you with conversions in a metric system. If you were to convert 675 meters to kilometers, for example, you would multiply 675 meters over 1 times 1 kilometer per 1,000 meters. Meters unit in the numerator cancels with the meters unit in the denominator, and you would multiply the numerators to get 675 kilometers and the denominator to get 1,000, which would be a division problem. 675 divided by 1,000, which gets you 0.675 kilometers. This method of using the units to set up the equation also works when you convert kilometers to meters. So to convert 56 kilometers to meters, you think of it as 56 kilometers over 1 times 1,000 meters per kilometer. The kilometers in the numerator cancels with the kilometers in the denominator, and you end up with 56 times 1,000 meters to get 56,000 meters. So what happens if you use the wrong conversion ratio to multiply? Let me show you here as we convert yards to feet. So we have 12 yards, and we want to figure out how many feet is that. Well, 1 yard equals 3 feet. If I multiply 12 yards with 1 yard over 3 feet, what happens? Well, 3 in the denominator goes into 12 4 times. Now I multiply the numerators. 4 times 1 equals 4. Now what happens with the units? I have yards times yard over feet, which equals yard square over feet, which is nonsensical. So we cross that out. We know that that's not the approach to use. Now, if I multiply 12 yards times 3 feet per yard, I get 12 times 3 equals 36. And then the yards in the numerator cancels with the yard in the denominator, leaving me with feet. So the answer is 36 feet. Okay, now we're ready to find the area of this rectangle. So the area of a rectangle equals the length times the width. So that is, we have length of 73.75 inches times the width at 63.5 inches. And as I said before, it's tempting to just grab the calculator, plug these numbers in, and get a quick answer. But when you are learning math, it's good to do these calculations by hand to reinforce these skills. And the hardest part of multiplying multiple digit numbers is keeping track of which digits you are working with and the place value and the numbers that you're carrying. So extremely important to keep your numbers written in a way that the columns are nice and clear. That takes some carefulness and discipline and practice. If I were working this on a piece of paper, I would spread out the numbers more, make sure that I don't lose track of the digits and place values. It would be reasonable to use a half page of a notebook paper to actually work this problem. Double check your calculations as you go, knowing that a simple multiplication mistake or an addition mistake can result in a wrong answer. And if you need a refresher on how to multiply decimals, please watch my earlier video, Lesson 17, Multiplying Decimals. Don't forget to include the decimal point for the product at the end, and use a calculator at this point to check your answer. Now I have completed my calculation and figured out that the length times width equals 4,683.125 inches square, or square inches. So how many square feet is 4,683.125 square inches? So to convert square inches to square feet, you need to do a division. 4,683.125 divided by, what do we need to divide this number by to get square feet? So let's take a look at the units. 1 inch square equals 1 inch times 1 inch. 1 foot equals 12 inches. If we divide both sides of the equation with 12, we get 12 inches divided by 12 on the right-hand side. 12 divided by 12 equals 1, so 1 inch on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, we have 1 foot over 12, or 1/12 of a foot. We go back to 1 inch square equals 1 inch times 1 inch. And substitute 1/12 of a foot for 1 inch. So 1 inch square equals 1/12 of a foot times 1/12 of a foot. So we multiply straight across those fractions. The numerators would just be 1 times 1 equals 1, and the denominator would be 12 times 12. I do that calculation on the side. 12 times 12 equals 144. So 1 square inch equals 1 over 144 square feet. 1 square inch equals 1 over 144 square feet. So then 4,683.125 inches square equals 1 over 144 square feet times 4,683.125. We multiply the numerators to get 4,683.125, and the denominator would be 144. And we don't forget the unit, square feet. The fraction 4,683.125 over 144 is a division problem. 4,683.125 divided by 144. So I clear my screen to make room for that calculation. 4,683.125 divided by 144. And once again, I will do this calculation by hand. Back before there were calculators, all sorts of calculations were done by hand. Great civilizations were built. If you look at old architecture, amazing architecture was built entirely with hand-calculated computations, the construction of which we rarely see duplicated even today. So I encourage you to get in the habit of doing these calculations on paper and pencil. So when I divide multiple digit numbers, I like to write out all the multiples of the divisor first, get those calculations done on the side, and double check them as I go. So I write down all the multiples of 144 from 1 through 9 on the side. It takes a little time, it's a little tedious, but it ensures that I minimize opportunity for making mistakes. And once I have those multiples all lined up, ready to go, the division problem becomes a simple subtraction problem. There's no need for guess and check as I go through the division because I have the multiples all worked out. So now I have my multiples of 144 all lined up from 1 through 9, and I am ready to do the division problem. I'll switch colors on the division problem so it will be clearer. And I begin. 144 goes into 468 exactly 3 times. Write 3 on the quotient line above 8. 3 times 144 equals 432. I subtract. 468 minus 32 equals 36. Bring down the next digit, 3. 144 goes into 363 2 times. I write 2 next to 3 on the quotient line. 2 times 144 equals 288. Now I subtract 363 minus 88 equals 75. Now I bring down the next digit, 1, and continue the problem. 144 goes into 751 5 times. I write 5 on the quotient line after I bring up the decimal point. So behind the decimal point on the quotient line, I write 5. 5 times 144 equals 720. I subtract. 751 minus 720 is 31. I bring down the next digit 2 and continue the division. 144 goes into 312 two times. I write 2 on the quotient line. 2 times 144 equals 288. I subtract 312 minus 288 equals 24. I bring down the last digit from the dividend, 5. So how many times does 144 go into 245? It goes in 1 time. I write 1 on the quotient line, and 144 underneath 245. I do the subtraction, and at this point I am done. There's no need to continue the problem. So 4,683.125 square inches equals 32.521 square feet, or about 32 and a half square feet, and I box my answer. In the description box below this video, I have included some links to some practice problems for area and perimeter of polygons. Some of these problems will require you finding the sides of right triangles, which we have not covered yet. I will cover that in my next video on the Pythagorean theorem. The answers to these problems are also included in this problem set. So you can get started on working out on some of these problems of this problem set. And for those problems that are too difficult, wait until after the next video lesson. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, subscribe, and share this channel with anyone you know who wants to learn math. Thank you for joining me at Do the Math America.